Hey everyone, I'm back, and I hope you had a great Christmas. What a magical time of the year it is, isn't it? A great time to enjoy with your family, with tons of food, and most importantly, the freezing temperatures outside, only motivating us to stay together with the ones we love more and more. Unless you live in the southern hemisphere like I do. Have you ever listened to Monster Magnet before? If not, then go listen to Dopes to Infinity or Super Judge, and then come back, because this album is basically the same thing as those, just very diluted. This is pretty much just for the core Monster Magnet fans that just want more of their stuff, and even then it's pretty underwhelming. Although nothing here is truly bad, not even the negative highlights, it's just unremarkable. So unremarkable that I have barely anything else to say besides that it's possibly Monster Magnet's worst record. Not even the positive highlights really stand out. Well, it's still Monster Magnet anyway, so even their worst is still decent. Which is why the score here is 61% superb still. Shatner's career so far has been super bizarre, there's no denying that. But the last thing I could have expected from him was that he would drop an album at the age of 90 that would be actually pretty amazing. Yet look where we are now. If you know Shatner's music, then you already have sort of a notion where this album goes. It's a spoken word poetry record that I get how some can make it boring. William himself did it in the past, but this one is anything but. The instrumentation here is super rich, and no song is like the previous. He's constantly jumping from genre to genre, and often it works out in ways that I didn't even know it could be possible, especially in the amazing positive highlights, with the best track being one of the best songs I've heard this year. Of course, it can only go so far, because there are indeed some less engaging moments in the tracklist. But even with those in place, I'm still darn impressed that he was able to make a record so bold and so compelling that I feel comfortable saying it's one of the most underrated projects of this year. Need proof? Well, the score here is 82%. In the very beginning of the year, Joe released the Joe cover of the Lego Island song Brick by Brick, and I will be real, expect that song to show up among my 50 best songs of the year list. Not only because of the novelty, but also because the instrumental is excellent. And I was expecting some more of that level of great guitar work going to this. But jump into the present, and we have an album that begins with promise, but loses strength as it goes. I do enjoy it considerably, but there are many points where the compositions feel lost, or at worst, unremarkable. That is compensated by some great production, the clear passion that the musicians have in here, and of course, the positive highlights. But as an overall experience, I'd probably say it's less...
Wake me up!
and more...
Oh. Oh yeah. Okay.
So, 66%. It's a pretty good metal release. It's well produced and the singer can certainly pack a punch. But I'd probably say my chances of returning to it in the future are somewhat low. Not because it's bad, mind you, but rather because it didn't really successfully grab me. I've seen some people including this as one of their favorite releases of the year, and good for them. But as for me, I can say that I really like the positive highlights, thought the negative highlight was awkward, and also that this album is heavy but accessible, which makes it a great record for someone who's just starting out to listen to metal. Not as like a first ever listen, but more like first dive into modern metal. And that's pretty much all I can say about this. Besides the score of the record being 74% superb, of course. Everyone's got that one vocalist whose voice just grinds your gears. To some it's Amy Lee, others Peter Hamill, Geddy Lee, whatever. To me, this person is Westside Gunn. And not gonna lie, this is the main reason why I struggle to connect so much with his work, and he's my least favorite rapper of the Griselda camp. I concur that out of both projects he released this year, this is undoubtedly the better one, not by a whole lot. To me it's pretty much just the same thing Side A offered, just less obnoxious, but still far from enjoyable. At least in the production end, it's well groomed, and the fact the longer project is a better one is admirable. Yet, no, this is not for me, at all. I hope someday Westside voice will stop getting me on my nerves so much. Well, here are the highlights, and score here is 39%. I suffer of a condition called the boy genius syndrome. That basically means that of these simple melancholic indie folk / rock songwriters like Snail Mail, Phoebe Bridgers, and of course Lucy Dacus, I rarely tend to feel very pleased by their music, and therefore end up giving them pretty mediocre scores. You better thank I never reviewed Punisher. But for this new album of Dacus, I certainly dug more than expected. Not that much, but it's still a win. If you are familiar to the sound I just described, then you know what you're in for here. But I found the compositions here to be much more robust than in Historian. There's a certain spice that while it doesn't make me love this record, it elevates the album to the point that I wouldn't mind revisiting it every now and then. There are some weak points, can't deny that, but the positive ones overshadow those enough to the point that I'd call this a successful improvement, even if it's leagues from being one of my favorite records of the year. It's not even my favorite album in that category, leave that to Julian, but there's still lots of room for improvements for her, and I know she will be able to do something that I love in the future. But for home video, it's 69% superb. Nice. I remember when I first saw Remi Wolf's aesthetic, it initially turned me off, but the more I looked to it, the more it grabbed my attention. Now that I finally checked this album out, all I can say is that I only regret not checking this out sooner. This has to be one of the most full of personality pop albums of this year. It blends in elements of synth funk and hip hop into it like it's nobody's business. And the lyricism here is bizarre in how well it works. I mean, get a girl that can make references to both Two Girls One Cup and Chuck E. Cheese in the same song. Yeah, some moments in here weren't quite as good, but they weren't bad, neither were misguided steps in this album. And I honestly can say that this is one of the most engaging pop albums I've heard this year. And I feel pretty comfortable saying that I'm already a Remi Wolf's fan. Positive highlights on screen, and the score here is 89%. I'm glad to see Hiatus Kaiyote returning to the scene with a record that meets with expectations. The band keeps going with a record that has songs that are just as great, if not better, than the ones from Choose Your Weapon, even if it's a little shorter, and the length was one of the problems that I had with the previous album. So this means the record is a win in every conceivable way, right? Well, not really. I do think the songs in the middle of the tracklist tend to be kinda boring, and while there are many songs that I really liked in here, I still think some aspects of the album's sequencing could be better. But don't let that take away from the experience for you. It's a pretty darn sweet record, and I look forward to revisit it again in the future. The highlights are on screen now, and my score for this album is 73%. By the end of September, I found out this album was going to vanish, and I impulsively bought it on Sault's Bandcamp. And the album arrived, so I might as well review it for the sake of my money. Luckily, my money wasn't gone in vain. 9 is a pretty solid album, and I'd say it's one of Sault's most engaging projects so far. It has a great blend of various genres, from neo-soul to funk to hip-hop, and all of them sound real great. Sadly, the second half of the record is a lot weaker than the first one, but nothing terrible. It just loses part of the momentum the record was having until then. But overall, I'd say this was money well spent. Oh loud. Here come the highlights on screen. Let them pass and vanish just like this album did. Oh, and here's his card too. That's nifty. This new Chvrches album is a great treat to me, because it changed how I see the band. I used to see them as just another generic synth-pop act that gets buzzed about by "I'm not like the other people young adults." And now, I see them as a respectable synth-pop act that shows that I'm not like the other people young adults occasionally have a decent taste. The record isn't exactly anything new, and it took a while until it fully hooked me. But I'll say one thing, for what it sets up to be, it sure is a pretty compelling ride. Notably when we talk about the positive highlights, these are as cool as the gang. And right, it may have its low points, and the sound of this record is nothing new. But I'm not complaining too much if the listening experience makes me go nice. Here are the negative highlights, and to wash the wound, the score is 75%. And with that, my journey to learn to love dream pop and shoegaze continues. Still with no success though. Considering this is one of the biggest releases of the genre this year, I decided to give this a shot, hoping that it would finally click with me. At last, it didn't. The problems I have with this record are the same as all the ones I have with the whole genre. To me it feels tiring, it doesn't grab me, and by the final cuts of the records, I just wonder how long it's gonna keep going. So take this review with a grain of salt, because I'm not the most qualified person to be talking about this. But at principle, I can recognize the musicians have talent, and the positive highlights were pleasant tracks. Still, I won't give up on that objective. Someday, this genre will click with me. Well, negative highlights, 55%. In my list of things I was expecting for 2021, Alienating making a comeback record diving into indie pop and being surprisingly damn good wasn't one of them, but here we are now, and I don't know what to say else, it's incredible. I'd say that it's even hard to believe that they are the same people. But in reality, it's very likely that they aren't the same alienating of when they were huge. People grow up, especially when you make music as a teenager. Do I really have to mention Miley Cyrus' trajectory until where she is now? And about this album, I guess that it's not perfect. There were a few songs that I wasn't totally a fan of, but this has to be one of the most surprising comeback records I've heard in recent memory. I can't wait to see where they'll go from now. The highlights are on screen. Pretty sure I used less characters typed them out than in the title. And the score is 78%. Good job, girls! It feels kinda shocking to me that Van Gogh's Left Ear is ZelooperZ 7th studio album. Not because it's amateurish, far from that, but because it has the artist showing a sound that has tons of potential, but it's not fully developed. The sound here is his very zany brand of hip-hop, with some very noticeable Danny Brown influence, but with a much stronger abstract hip-hop punch, and also some outlandish sampling as well, most notably of Crash Bandicoot's main theme. Some songs in here show how expansive the potential of the sound can be, but there are definitely some duds along the way that show that it needs to be more well balanced for it to work more efficiently. I did thought it was a good and potent listen, but it's definitely not year-end list material. Yet, I will keep an eye on ZelooperZ's next releases, because this man proved he deserves some attention. Hopefully next time he'll hit the home run. 68% superb. This man is in the band that is responsible for at least 4 of my favorite albums of the past decade. So of course, going to his solo career, I had high expectations, which Truls stuck in hands and passed them through a meat grinder, and dipped them in sulfuric acid. This album is limp, there's no other way to describe it. Super bland and unimaginative. At least I can say it's well produced, which is the reason it's still in the plus 50% side, but it's not by much. Better stick to graveyard material. Here are the relevant highlights and 51% superb.